We're thrilled today to be welcoming artist Jennifer Angus to the Chipstone Foundation. Jennifer is a professor of design studies at University of Wisconsin-Madison and also an artist who works in an unusual medium.
That's true. The cabinet is actually an old hardware cabinet. It would have held screws and nails, and that's what the numbers indicate on it. And I have turned it into a cabinet of curiosities. There are 98 drawers, and each of them is filled. I guess it's time to reveal that my medium is insects. I made this work for an exhibition at the Renwick Gallery, which is the Smithsonian's craft gallery. At the Renwick, the walls were covered in a pattern that was composed of insects. And in fact, that's what's in this cabinet. So you can think about going to a natural history museum and perhaps pulling out drawers in which there'd be various species, usually lined up according to their types and then size and sometimes color. My drawers are a little bit different. I described this cabinet of curiosities, but they're also known as cabinets of wonder. As you encounter these drawers, I hope that people will go, wow. The insects are doing various activities, although they're not activities that we would typically associate with insects. So for all intents and purposes, they've been anthropomorphized there. They are often cooking, learning, so reading books, teaching. You know, there's a hint of some tension. There is a feeling of perhaps a battle about to happen. So there are many little, I guess I'd call them vignettes. Some of them are connected to each other and some aren't. The potential here is for people to make up the story themselves. I mean, of course, I have an idea, but I don't feel strongly that this is the one interpretation. And it's just as enjoyable to me to hear what other people think is happening.
Well, and we've used this at Chipstone in some ways as a pedagogical tool or as a prompt for students interested in curatorial work. So we've asked students to come in and pick a drawer or to pick a series of drawers and to come up with their own stories or to come up with a word that they could apply to that drawer as almost a label, as if they were curating just that one small piece of this larger work. And there was a strong desire on their part to come up with stories, to suggest possibilities, to ask questions, and really empathizing and identifying with the figures created out of the insect bodies in these drawers.
And that's really what, in many respects, the goal of this work is when people hear insects, they instantly go, ugh. And certainly with my larger installations, I've had people who don't even want to enter the room. They hate insects so much. And I thought about how important insects are to our environment. We need them to pollinate flowers, which in turn produce the fruits we so enjoy. And we need them to decompose matter. And let's face it, we're at a critical time on our planet. We're hearing about the millions and millions of honeybees that are dying. And this is just absolutely devastating. One of my goals is for people to simply look at insects in a different way. That would be great if we could think of insects rather than as pests, as contributing. And that brings up something about what they're doing in the drawers. They're often learning or teaching. They often are doing textile activities. And that's very intentional on my part. I've thought a lot about specifically bees and ants and how they have this perfect society in which every member has a role. And as a result, they can be really industrious. So I thought about that industry, and then I thought about our world and the Industrial Revolution. And what's the first area that got mechanized was the textile industry. And then sort of the in-joke is that I teach textile design at Madison. And of course, I'm a professor, so that's in part why they're teaching and reading books and things like that.
And that also, in addition to that autobiographical part, allows you to so successfully leverage these metaphors that we so often apply to insects. I mean, just thinking of them as these beings, as you say, who are so industrious. Well, if they're so industrious, why do we want to destroy them all the time? Can't we value what they're doing?
Well, and I sometimes think, who was here first, really? We complain about insects, but I'm sure that if they could speak, they'd be complaining about us and the things that we do that impact them. Unfortunately, they aren't speaking, so that's kind of left to people like me, I guess, to try and be the voice. So the walls in this room are really an incredible magenta color. And that color is actually from an insect colorant. The insect is called cochineal. There is a drawer that has the cochineal insect, and they're about the size of seed beads. They are from Latin America, grown on nopal cactus. And it's just the females that produce the color. So if you take those dried insects and you grind them up, you can make this fantastic red color. So it's probably in a lot more places than people have really thought about. And then the honey, of course, an obvious insect product. And I think that brings up something that relationship between man and insects is one of tension. Of course, there are those insects, bees in particular, that can hurt us by a sting or bite us. You think of mosquitoes and things like that. But I think man has always sought to try and tame nature. And we've had some success perhaps with honeybees in that there's a relationship that we can build them their hives, and then they will start making the wax and the honey, and then we're able to collect that. That's one success. Most of the endeavors that man takes on to try and tame nature, of course, are just incredible disasters. and that's Mother Nature paying us back.
Interesting. I hadn't made the connection that with the cochineal and the honey, they're both things that are consumed, that we're consuming in our bodies, and you're then transforming them into these aesthetic objects.
That's true.
One observation that some students made, which hadn't occurred to me initially, was that the cabinet itself is almost like a beehive.
Yes. Honestly, I saw it in an antique mall, and I looked at it for months. And I knew it was perfect for me. And it even turns, it's sort of Lazy Susan-like if you were so inclined.
Wow. Yeah, and the fact that you can look at it in the round, though, I think is something that's also quite effective, especially in this much more domestically scaled context.
Yeah. When this was shown at the Renwick, apparently during the run of the exhibition, some 500,000 people came through. And so a decision was made that drawers on each side would be propped open. And that's understandable, just the wear and tear would be tremendous on this. So it's wonderful to have it in this location where people can really engage with it, because it made me sad to have filled 98 drawers and to have perhaps a quarter of them open, and there were so many secrets there to be found.
Well, one thing that was so pleasing about that was just this real sense of wonder that it engendered in people coming into the space. It was so exciting to watch those interactions because they realized, well, I can touch this. I'm empowered. I'm given some curatorial authority here, because there isn't a label that says each drawer means this.
Right.
And I think that's very powerful, that they have this authority to come up with their own stories.
I think if you're imaginative, it's powerful. A pretty common question I get asked are the insects real? And I know that there's a gold beetle in there, and that is its natural color. And I wonder if someone stumbled upon that drawer and questioned, oh, did she have this gold plated? Or the gold beetle is paired with a miniature book that is a story by Edgar Allan Poe. There's another drawer that has, again, a miniature book, Shakespeare, and it is dedicated to the actress Ellen Terry, who very famously played Lady Macbeth, and she wore a dress that was covered with green metallic beetle wings. And so the book is opened, and it says dedicated to Ellen Terry, and then all those green metallic beetle wings are there. The detail, I'm gonna say, is quite extraordinary, and I think that you could spend a lot of time with this work and discover new things all the time.
And these different tiny little textual clues or visual and material clues could lead a viewer down a whole different pathway.
Oh yeah. Within the cabinet there are a number of these creatures who I call them hybrid creatures. They have a beeswax body that I cast in a mold, and then they have a cicada head and grasshopper arms. And they are often in charge or sort of benevolent creatures within this world. Most of the time they're positive, but from time to time they can be a bit sinister too.
In thinking about 19th century museums and sort of the Victorian culture around science education, I'm thinking about a phrase that you hear a lot, the fairyland of science, as this way to talk about and think about the magic that science can allow for, the magic that you can find in natural history specimens.
Absolutely.
And it seems so much that you're finding a way to access this fairyland quality of these specimens and transforming them into these beings that have this whole other life, many, many times their natural life. And that seems to be doing some powerful aesthetic and also fanciful, almost magical work with these specimens.
Again, one of the things that attracts me about that sort of latter half of the 19th century, nature in reality is stranger than fiction. It's just so engaging, and at that time there's a resurging interest in folklore and a belief in the supernatural. Everyone's having seances, and so it just tapped into a moment in time that people could really engage with nature in a way that was exciting.